Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to everyone at the first panel discussion at DigiBank Summit, the KSA edition. I'm extremely sorry for the delay in starting this, but technology deceives us at the right time most of the time. Mr. Hani, the moderator, has not been able to join in. So I would be taking his place as a moderator. I would really like to welcome our panelist, our esteemed panelist for today, Mr. Anjum Noman Mirza, the head of trade, finance, and corporate banking from National Commercial Bank, Saudi Arabia, Mr. Alper Oima, the Senior Sales Manager, SAP Concur, Saudi Arabia, Mr. Fahad Antit, SVP, Head of Cards and Payments from Riyadh Bank, Saudi Arabia, and Mr. Nand Kumar Janardhan, the Head of Operation and Risk from NBQ UAE. The moderator was supposed to be Mr. Hani Maskati. If he's able to join in, we will let him join in from the middle of the session. But till then, let's start the session, gentlemen. And what we can do is that we can tell the moderators to start introducing themselves. Let's start with Mr. Anjum. Mr. Anjum, can you give us one line about yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Anandi, and thanks for having me over here. Assalamu alaikum and good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd just like to make a little bit of correction in my title. I'm the head of trade finance under transactional banking and not the head of corporate banking. So transactional banking is a function under corporate banking at NCB. As far as I've been in Saudi Arabia for the last 6 years, working at NCB, and before that at Banque Saudi Fransi. Have been mostly a corporate banker as well as in international banking, trade finance, and risk. So these have been my fortes previously. That's about it. So thank you.
Can we have Mr. Alper?
Yes, thank you very much, Misu, for having me in this panel. I'm really appreciate it. So my name is Alper Oima. I represent SAP Concur in this panel. So as you might know, SAP is a technology supplier who helps many companies in the world to automate their business processes. And SAP Concur is primarily focused on managing employee initiated spend, such as travel expense, petty cash, you name it. So I have been in SAP for the past 6 years and in the region for the past 11 years. I'm very excited to be part of this panel. I hope it's going to be fruitful for the attendees.
Thank you, Alper. On this note, I would like to welcome Hani. Hani, welcome. And as I said sometime back, technology receives us at the right time, most of the time. So Mr. Anjum and Alper have introduced themselves. I will leave the stage to you and I will go on mute and shut off my mic. If there's anything you require from your side, I'm right here on standby. Hani, you're on mute.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
For the technical hookup. It is a digital session anyway. So after the introductions, obviously, the title of it gave me a great pleasure and honor to chair this important panel regarding the role of technology in the new world of banking. We're lucky today that we are joined with the expertise and stakeholders from the banking side. We have 3 bankers and one at the technology as well. To give us an insight as much as possible during the 45 minutes to cover this very important and a very large topic. Obviously, there are, during the 45 minutes, we try to cover key trends that shaping this industry from the pandemic impact, customer experience, the utilization of data, AI, the move to the cloud, and so on and so forth. So without overdue, I'd like to start at least the discussions by addressing Mr. Alper on how has the global pandemic accelerated the digital evolution in banks from his perspective, and if you can share one example that struck the most during this period, please.
Thanks, Hanid. So this is a very interesting question. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I really wanted to approach this from an uh, employee engagement and compliance perspective, if you don't mind. So home office is the new norm for many employees. So they need to purchase office supplies, pay for internet, and mobile communication expenses, then claim them. And this has to be done remotely. So it's not like the past that you can simply fill out the Excel sheet, hand it over, to your line manager, get it signed, so that it will be processed by the finance or HR team. So this is totally different. So on the other hand, the finance and HR departments, uh, HR and can you hear me, gentlemen?
Yes.
Clear.
Yeah, perfect. I wanted to check because sometimes, I lose. So HR departments will need to audit all the employee expenses, maybe from home, and make sure that, they are compliant with company policies. So the trend is really utilizing mobile cloud platforms, such as SAP Concur to drive higher employee engagement and compliance during these difficult times. So if you come to an example, so I can give one of my customers as an example. So what we have realized in this customer is that the amount of employee initiated spend on non-travel expenses is way higher than travel related expenses these days, as you can imagine. So the situation is changing very fast, and the organizations has to adopt to that change very fast.
Mr. Nat Kumar, from your perspective, and give us an idea in the UAE where you are based. Has the global pandemic accelerated the digitals from your perspective?
Ani, I could not hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All of you, you can hear me, right?
Yes. Would you like to share your view on the first questions? I just put it across to Mr. Albert.
Yes, at the outset, I would like to thank Khaleej Times for organizing this event and giving me an opportunity to share my views. I have not got a chance to introduce myself. I have been a veteran banker, close to 35 years of banking experience in UAE. I'm a core banker and not a technological person, but I've got enough exposure to technology by implementing various applications in the bank, be it core banking, online banking, mobile banking, and I bridge the gap between the business and the technology. So my views will be purely, biased towards customer requirements, basically. So this pandemic has been a really blessing in disguise. Before the pandemic, you must have seen banks across the world have been struggling to get the customers to utilize all the digital applications. Probably an average is about 30% of the customers are really using digital banking. But this pandemic has really, brought up all this, oh, we don't want to touch the notes, or we don't want to touch the keypads, or we don't, and this. So this actually has driven the customers to go for contactless cards, digital online banking, and all that. But still, there is room for improvement. So in the last 6 months, we have seen a surge in the registration for online banking and mobile banking, at least in UAE, which I have seen. Okay. But still, there is a lot of scope for that. For example, in UAE, as per research report done 2-3 years back, 4 billion cash is being withdrawn from the ATMs. I don't know what will be the figure for Saudi. If these cash transactions are not converted into digital transactions, we are not achieving the full scalability or usability of these digital applications. One of the way is to use digital wallets, basically. And UAE is making an effort towards that. A couple of large banks have already launched their digital wallet, but this is restricted to only to those customers. But 16 banks have joined together in UAE and are coming out with a very common digital wallet, which anybody can use. A laundryman or this small supermarket or the salesman, all transactions above 20 dirhams will be now digitalized. So that is what will help all the banks' vision to make transactions as much as possible to make it digitalized. This is what my introductory comments will be there.
Thank you. I apologize, Natkumar, for the introduction because I joined lately, so I missed out who was introduced.
No issues, no issues.
Apologies.
No issues.
Yeah, Mr. Anjum, given, the size of NCB, if you would just share your views on the last, few years, or at least the last couple of quarters, where there has been a lot of acceleration on the digital evolution in the kingdom. You are mute, Anjum.
Yeah, thank you, Hani. Taking it over from what Alper and Nandakumar said, this is basically the contact that they discussed. I think if it was one thing I would want to emphasize on during this pandemic, what was mostly affected was global demand and supply because of these particular reasons, and demand and supply were affected simultaneously. That affected all the GDPs. So whether it came down all the way to small businessmen and individuals, of course. So effects came all the way to socially, on the business side, culturally, events, traveling, everything, right? So it's a very massive scale effect, if you can notice. So whatever, and in our history, what we have done is, whenever there was a use case for a particular requirement, there is always somebody in technology that is developing something for that particular incident, right? But if it's business as usual, you have certain goals to achieve. But this created certain very unprecedented environment in all different hemispheres. For banking, if I specify, it was not only from business and segments, but processing and the final contact to the customer, right? So I think the most important part was, how do you deal with it? And that is where I think the most important part comes, that collaboration would be a very, very important thing. So even when you have digital wallets, like Nandakumar was saying, one bank will continue issuing digital wallets, but more concepts of marketplaces have erupted around the world. And these marketplaces are going to be linked with not only banks, but also the consumer, the businesses, as well as technology partners. So use case has to be the most crucial part, and multiple use cases have been generated during this pandemic time.
Anjum, do you see it as like it's being pushed by the customers, be it the corporate side of the retail and the demand and the social media, or on the writer, or they come to the branches, or they call your call center, pushing for more digitalization, or it's the banks are taking an active role more than passive in pushing this digitalization?
Let me put it this way: that before pandemic, it was going as business as usual. Is roughly around 30% financial institutions were, there was an ICC survey done, and 30% of financial institutions globally, there was 250 banks involved in around the world in that survey. So 30% of the banks had sizable budgets for investment in technology, right? All that really changed. A lot of banks engaged during this pandemic time, and that was answering your question, was because of not only the customer or demand of a particular use case, or demand of a particular use case to convert it into digital, was unprecedentedly enhanced. And that came, for example, in trade. Trade documents are in billions. I think roughly around 445 billion papers are circulated around the world annually. So how much can we do? And supply chains were affected, logistics were affected, consumer behavior was affected. There was no demand. And so all these things, at each and every juncture, affects anybody in the supply chain and the financier. How I call it is the financier. So each use case created very unprecedented demand.
Thank you, Anjum, for this enlightening. Moving on to, I'd like to bring in Fahad, please. Fahad, I don't know if you had the chance to introduce yourself just before I become rude now and march into the question.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Hani, and welcome everyone. Assalamu alaikum, and thanks to Khaleej Times for hosting us onto this very informative session. This is Fahad Antid. I lead the cards and payments business at Riyadh Bank. Prior to that, I come with more than 13 years of experience in banking, fintechs, and technology payments companies globally like Visa and MasterCard. Very grateful to be with you guys and looking forward to learn and share our experience with the audience.
Great. Fahad, from your perspective, what ways can banks be prepared for the increased reliance in digital channels and the pressure on the technology infrastructures? The way you've seen it from all your experience over the 13 years.
I believe it's about the customer engagement and how do you enable him to access these banking services through all the channels. So digital channels or reliance on digital doesn't only limit the consumer to mobile experience. It's how do you drive the omnichannel engagement via web or mobile or tablet or even the payments part. How do you enable him to do payments via plastic or via mobile, and giving him the right infrastructure and the easy use in order to be able to engage further with the bank, giving him the right channels to service him, not through the need of visiting branches only or calling a contact center. So having this kind of 360-degree view of engagement with the customer and enabling him to reach out to the bank and the financial partner of that customer in the easiest manner, other than counting on the traditional banking experience of visiting a branch, is the most important piece in this kind of engagement.
Talking about the engagement, and a part of trying to launch a new digital product, it's some of them are all classic product. They're just getting digitalized or automated, and with the back end process end to end, that is transparent, efficient, and so on and so forth. What are the ways the banks remain viable in the current conditions? We know globally, all the big IT companies like the Google want to get into the financial space, and they've been trying to do that for a long time. The fact of the matter, the account remain with the banks, the front end with these IT companies, and they in a way control the journey of the clients within the banking. So how do you see that, for the bank to remain viable on these current conditions?
First, we really count on the trust. Customers trust dealing with the financial transactions with the financial institutions, and based on that trust, we want to give them the right customer experience and fulfill the needs that they have. So moving from traditional banking to the everyday transactions kind of services is something that we really aspire for, and we drive these kind of engagements or partnerships to help you as a consumer to stay engaged with the bank, not to think about the bank whenever you want to do a single loan transaction or get a product or whatever. No, how can I enable you to act in your daily life and access these financial services easily? I think that part is very critical, and we believe that the reliability that comes behind the banking infrastructure is very critical for consumers. Someone would trust a social media platform to share his high-level data, but would he trust sharing his financial information or his saving activities? These kind of changes will always put a bank in a position to be engaged with the consumer.
Hazim Kumar, how do you see that in the UAE panning out, that the banks remain viable in the current conditions? If I ask the same question to you, or from UAE perspective.
Actually, as I mentioned before, there has been a surge in the digital banking registrations, whether it be online banking or mobile banking. And banks have started attracting them by offering discounted tariffs, favorable exchange rates, targeted marketing campaigns, free offers on registration, tutorial sessions on how to use the sessions, staff incentives, and many more, and even call center support. Now, customers are were usually resistant to these changes, but when they see benefit out of it, they are knowing the advantage of using digital banking. But in the process, what is very important is for the banks to understand that, the customer touch feeling should not go away. Now, a bank may have a very good app, very secure app, everything is good about it, but the ease of navigation or customer doesn't find it very useful to use that. So for that sense, what you have to do is you have to have a good call center. You may have to have chatbots with the frequently answered queries. I read a statistic somewhere that usage of chatbots will save the bank's operation cost by $7 billion by 2023. So that is one of the options. But still, the customer feel should not be lost, actually. Just imagine a case where, you go to a hospital, everything is digitalized. The doctor doesn't come to you, but he just takes all the information through a keypad and tries to say. Or you go to a restaurant, you you order the food on a tab, but the person doesn't come and a robot is delivering that. But you want to give your reaction to the food. If nobody is around, then you lose business. So customer satisfaction is very important. We have to help the customers, be friendly to them, keep in touch with them, have a great call center, keep calling them. Some of the banks in UAE, what has done is the moment you have used a service, they immediately send out a feedback service.
We lost you for a minute here. I don't know what happened, but
is it? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. At least there was a pause for a minute.
I think the disconnect was from your side, Hani.
Yeah, okay. With all the savings that you have talking about the chatbot, has this, the expectation of the customer that saving should be passed to them, you think?
No, that actually helps the bank. See, that's what I was saying. Customer has been lost over there. For example, I've had a card from one of the largest banks in UAE. Okay. My card actually, the number could not be seen properly on that. I tried to call the call center. The chat box opened up, but there was no query because it senses the words. I said, card is damaged. It could not recognize those words. See, immediately, if the communication is disrupted, there should be email out to the call center agent so that he can call the customer and find out.
Absolutely.
These are the improvements.
This is unprecedented. I think technology would evolve and things like that will get better, and chatbot will get even better, and picking up dialects will get better, and so on and so forth. Moving on, thank you very much, Mr. Litkumar. Moving to Albert, from partnership, supplier relationship, from technology perspective, working with the banks, yeah, and as a third-party dependency, with the increase of digital banking, how do you see that relationship? Obviously, as an IT company, you're always pushing a new solution, user case, working with the business in the bank, and so on and so forth. But definitely, like Mr. Anjem mentioned it, and everybody, and Nat Kumar, there is an acceleration in the digitalization, not only the front end, but also the back end. So how do you see that, the relationship being redefined?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the question. I appreciate it. So, I clearly see that the partnership will be way important than ever. So we don't really see, let's say the banking or industry or the financial institutions only as one of our customers or the clients. We really see them as partners. Let me explain here a bit, because SAP Concur has been partnering with many banks since its existence to feed, corporate credit card transactions, to help organizations control their spend. And also it supports new technologies such as virtual cards, especially used for travel bookings these days. So I strongly, again, I have to, tell it again, I strongly believe that banks in our region should really consider the integrated with market-leading innovative solutions, like SAP Concur, for attracting new customers and also keep the existing ones loyal.
Anjem, from trade perspective, partnership. You're not talking about only the bank, the IT, but then you have the regulators, and then banks with the trade, they deal with paper, or they deal now with digital paper, if you like. And then you got all the stakeholders like the ports and everything else. That partnership, for years, has been very complex to make them all hymn and sing from the same sheet.
Yeah.
Do you see, because of the pandemic, because of the digitalization, government and regulators and are in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia coming closer and making this a more making the frog leap, if you like, or digitalization on the trade perspective?
Okay. That's a very good question. And I think it's very pertinent in this time of post-pandemic thinking scenario, you see. As we know, consumer banking has been far ahead than the corporate banking, if you notice that, right? So most of the trade, if you look at trade products also, they contribute to 20-25%, 80% or 75 to 80% around the world is open account business. And that has always been financed through certain other methods, very, very conventional products that age roughly about a century old, right? How do we move forward in bringing all the partners on a single platform? And now when it comes to a financier, so we assess what our stakeholders were. So during this pandemic, it was even realized by the corporates. So if I would say, do you want awareness and the will to go forward, was challenged and was being challenged for the last 2, 3, 4 years, like I mentioned, 30% by banks, but certainly that has changed a lot. A huge amount of investments have been flowing towards that. So for example, if consumer banking was already on the target on multiple fintechs as well as banks, now the corporate trade is through a lot of integrated supply chain as well as marketplaces are opening up now. Marketplaces and banks are right now accepting the third-party integrations from multiple fintechs. It could be Bolero or XDocs, for example, one of the two entities that provide digital trade documents for settlement purposes. It is basically, trade is, and banks have been used as an entity to transfer risk, right? For suppliers, that's the basic method for them. So if that can be arranged, like let's say, for example, Amazon, we go ahead and buy stuff from Amazon, Alibaba, right? What do? We just go click on our phones and we order something. But look at the amount of things that are being integrated right behind in the background. So the shipment risk has been taken care of, the performance risk has been taken care of, right? The currency risk has been taken care of, and the settlement risk has been taken care of, right? So all those things on a click. So if you want to, if I would give one example of how the banks are looking forward towards, especially NCB in Saudi Arabia, we are thinking of having the trade business, and also multiple other banks are also looking towards this single solution. And this is where I think the bank should look at the ease, the customer experience, and digitizing documents. So that is the core, I think. And I think the government of Saudi Arabia, like you mentioned, is really, I think in multiple government entities, a lot of digitization has happened. Like, for example, we have Tabadul, one of the government entity, which is now a centralized place where all the banks can, log in their guarantees, and the beneficiaries like government and other beneficiaries can validate their guarantees. NCB just launched one of our guarantees, which is 100% straight through process, which is nothing, you don't need to go to the branch, go click, exactly like you do anything on your phone for your consumer banking, right? So this is the transition I think we are looking at, and the trend where it's going.
Very interesting to see that the corporate banking is catching up with the retail banking,
especially the supply chain part, which has been a challenge.
I think for the corporate perspective, I think the SME sector or segment would like to see that technology digitalization also help with some liquidity providing of liquidity. How could you use that old data, AI, to analyze the SME segment and to, I mean, the initiative recently by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia regarding the supply chain initiative by, it's a great example that provide liquidity.
Yes.
But it's also, it needs also the corporate, the conglomerate or the blue chip company to, when it comes to term of payment, 30, 60, 90 days, with the help of technology, they can, provide liquidity or enhance their pricing and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of that things will happen, and who knows, will be derivative after that supply chain with all that portfolio could be listed in the tadawul, in the stock market.
Exactly.
Or people even you can take a piece and make money out of the trade and the supply chain.
Yes.
Moving on to the retail side, Mr. Fahad, at least from your perspective at the third party, I mean, with your background as a fintech, as a corporate, as a banker, and in charge of the card, that partnership, do you build it yourself? Do you partner with fintech? And how is that relationship going, I mean, Albert can mention in the old days, they sell software, they get licensed. The fintech company, they would like to take a piece of the cake, they want revenue sharing. How is that partnership working out?
Indeed, I think that's a very critical topic that's happening, and it's an enabler at the same time. So looking at the classic partnerships model or the vendor relationship model that banks used to have with great partners like Schemes or big technology giants like SAP, IBM, others, and that enable banks to provide services faster to the market or with more reliability. But the new partnerships that are coming into the scope is how do I drive an additional value for you as a customer, and references like Apple Pay or the partnership that we had with the shipping cart kind of platforms that enable SMEs to build their platforms and accept payments immediately rather than and help them to move in the pandemic situation from the offline business to the online business. These kind of activities, it will help banks to go closer to the consumer and give them a more engaged kind of service model or products that can not only rely on the bank infrastructure, but on the partners. And this goes hand in hand with the new fintechs that are coming to the market. How do I partner with them rather than compete with them to serve the market in a better way, to serve the whole ecosystem, and enable the consumers to do more transactions? So typically, if you look at the latest numbers in terms of cash versus cashless transactions, we're around 30% of transactions there. However, the opportunity is huge, and the remaining on 40 to 50% out of that, and there will be always cash, so 20 to 30% will be there. But the remaining 40 to 50%, how do you drive the last product, the right products there, and how do you partner with technology providers, with fintechs, with tech enablers to make sure that you are providing this new services or a new banking approach to the consumers and corporates at the same time is very critical. I think that's the core of partnerships, and this is how the new partnerships will work, more than a technology provider selling a service rather than a technology provider partnering with an entity to provide a new service.
To the second point, which is open banking, the transformation of open banking. Now, within the GCC, some countries have made the rules, some countries are work in progress, and the open banking goes back to the first earlier point you made, Fahad, regarding the customer journey and so on. So, from your perspective in Saudi, I mean, maybe the UAE, as Kumar can tell us more about the open banking as it's happened there now, right?
Not much, I think so. I think only Bahrain has come out with some regulations, right? UAE has not come out with it.
Yes. In Saudi, Fahad, how do you see that open banking regulation coming along? And when
so regulations are not announced yet. However, I think if we go back to the basics, open banking talks about three areas. First, the open APIs, where the bank opens some services to fintechs or partners to be able to do kind of some financial transactions. For example, Riyadh Bank enabled most of the fintechs in the Saudi market to offer some of their services, and that's part of the open banking scope. There was a partnership with multiple fintechs where they use virtual account services or remittances or accesses to direct infrastructure of internal domestic remittances of Sharia. So these kind of services are part of the open banking scope. The second component of open banking is data, which is the account aggregation or giving the customer the access to his data and being able to share it with other institutions that are licensed to have an access to this kind of information and give him more insights, build more decisions, introduce solutions like personal finance management and budgeting and saving. And all this kind of stuff comes under the regulation aspect. So that I think will come soon to the market. However, that data part is still not regulated in the market. We have seen some other markets in the region like Bahrain have introduced their regulations. And the third part, which is the open technology or the open source technology part, which will help fintechs and the financial players to be able to have an access to this to both information, typically the open APIs and the data part. So if you look at the regulator aspect and what we have seen in other markets, regulator always touched on how do we open data and how do we centralize some APIs. So any bank or any financial institution or any technology partner that even merchants can have an access to a certain information that the customer chooses to share it. So it's typically handing over the ownership of the data to the consumer himself and deciding, do I want to share my banking details with bank A to bank B? If I want to shift my relationship from bank C to bank D, how am I able to do that? This is one of the use cases of open banking, but I think open banking have started a bit earlier in Saudi in terms of the technology and opening the APIs, and it will continue to evolve with the introduction of the sandbox from the regulator 2 years ago and the enablement of all the fintechs. We have to work hand in hand and open our technology infrastructure further to help the ecosystem to grow further and help the customer transform their habit from cash to cashless transactions.
It's the first day we can refer to SAMA as central bank, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's a day. From open bank, of course, from the trade perspective, Anja, would you like to add something on the open bank? How does that will affect, improve, enhance trade offerings from the bank side and the customers?
Okay. So, I mean, open banking has moved a lot in Europe, and I mean, it's coming to the region also. I think Central Bank of Saudi Arabia, SAMA, has also, I think, authorized, like Bahrain also, authorized a couple of companies. So the technology companies need to be licensed, and Bahrain offers a sandbox with the Central Bank of Bahrain for those technology companies to be authorized to do that for security purpose and all that. But this information sharing will open up so many avenues. Because if the ownership of is with the particular customer, of course, he's allowed to share, so he can share, and digital onboarding becomes very easy like this. Let me explain why in supply chain it becomes very important also. Currently, I mean, SAMA has just recently signed with 3 banks, NCB being one of them, a supply chain solution for its vendors. And this is going to go a long way. And especially when the government gets involved, things move definitely much faster. But this, while we talk about open banking, the information that the corporates can share through each of these platforms for suppliers, whether they're cross-border or local, that will massively enhance the opportunity for any financier to come in the platform, right? And not just these 3 banks. I mean, they'll be leading the way for corporates and all that. But let's not forget the SMEs that are always looking for liquidity. So when they transfer their information, right? So they can move from each bank on a single platform like a marketplace. That is, I think, a little bit of enhancement that's required on open banking, because so far open banking has been only used mostly for small lending and as well as consumer banking. But there is, it hasn't moved in more product awareness and product, penetration through the platform to the consumer base and corporate.
Inshallah soon. Gentlemen, my clock, I was timing according to my clock when I joined, So they tell me that you started before I joined, so they have another timing. So they telling me the time is going to finish in half a minute. So I could not negotiate and ask for back value, like, dealing with bankers and back value. But I will just conclude. Look, this is Albert being quiet for a while. Sorry, Albert, we didn't come back to you. And this is what you do for living technology. If you just, in half a minute or less than that, just tell us your review on the technology, and we just wrap it up. And
Thanks, Hani, for giving me this opportunity. I mean, as many panel speakers clearly mentioned, I think the new era is all about having a strong partnership with technology vendors, fintechs, and having a kind of an open platform in a way that everybody can build an innovative solutions. So as an SAP and SAP Concur, we are very open to welcome all the banks, in the region to start discussing the possible partnerships to really add their customers a value and increase their revenues in the upcoming years to come. Thank you very much.
But I guess the people who will have their job lost, it will be you guys, right?
Yeah,
we'll all end up working for you. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. As we run out of time, the organizer Mitsu is telling me on the private chat that we will have no time to take a question. Unfortunately, I'm sure the audience would like to ask a lot of questions, but unfortunately, for the time being, I would like to thank Mr. Fahad, Mr. Anjem, Mr. Albert, Mr. Natkumar for your time, information shared, and appreciate all the data and the information you have enlightened us and the audience with. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
And thanks to you, Hani. You were a great moderator.
Thank you,
Hani. Thank you very much. I am extremely sorry that I had to tell you that we're running out of time. And but of course, I will be sending the questions to all of you. There are very, very interesting questions that have come from the audience. I will be sending the questions to you, and I request if you could please take 2 minutes of your busy schedules and answer those questions. And I really appreciate each and every one of you for being a part of this this initiative by Khaleej Times. And I hope that for the next edition on which is going to be an on-ground event in 2021, all of you can be a part of the event. And thank you very much. And sorry for the technical glitches. Have a good day, everyone.
Mr. Anjamina get the award for the nice artwork behind him, and Mr. Albert, the nice furniture.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Award. You should give award virtual for all the decoration at the back.
Yeah, exactly. Especially Alpers is very nice. The digital, virtual background. I like that.
Virtual, yes.
Right.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Pleasure.
Bye.